The established narrative of modern global conflict is meticulously polished, a history constructed of official communiques and carefully vetted timelines. This public history serves a distinct purpose: to categorize actions within parameters of acceptable policy and predictable outcome. Yet, folded deep within the vault architecture, secured behind layers of electronic encryption and monitored by specialized security detachments, are the files that refuse classification. These are the spectral records, detailing operations executed not in the light of conventional doctrine, but in the pervasive shadow of absolute deniability. They are ghost missions, existing solely in the minds of those who executed them, the raw data logs that escaped immediate sanitation, and the brittle documents sealed against the daylight. These 5 accounts represent the violent divergence where operational reality severed ties completely with the reported truth. The first such dossier bears the cold aquatic designation, Hydrus. The file details a highly sensitive recovery endeavor initiated in the Abyssal Zone, a region miles beneath the restless, turbulent surface of the northern Pacific. This was not a rescue, but an extraction, focused on a specific sunken vessel of high strategic interest, a hull resting at pressures that render human life instantly nullified, existing in permanent, ink-black cold. The operation relied entirely upon highly specialized, remotely operated deep-sea vehicles, ROVs, and a manned submersible platform designed to resist the crushing weight of the ocean above. The initial mission parameters emphasized silence. Acoustic emissions were strictly monitored and limited. The only tolerable sound was the low, persistent hum of the battery packs and the controlled churn of ballast tanks. The sensory world at this depth is one of crushing, pervasive darkness, broken only by the powerful, focused beam arrays of the submersibles. These lights cut through the gloom, revealing particulate matter drifting like cosmic dust and the eerie, preserved architecture of the seabed. The target hull, encrusted with hydrozoa and iron oxide, lay angled against a deep trench wall. For 72 hours, the work proceeded methodically, the articulated arms of the ROVs manipulating specialized cutting tools, retrieving designated components. The official report, later circulated to explain the platform's subsequent docking delay, simply referenced a minor hydraulic failure and an unexpected surge in localized current, forcing an early ascent. The unacknowledged truth, meticulously cataloged in the suppressed sonar recordings, reveals a kinetic exchange. Approximately 80 hours into the deep-sea operation, a distinct acoustic signature registered. Not the environmental clicks or whale song common to the deep, but the rhythmic, synchronized pulse of a foreign submersible moving at high speed, utilizing advanced stealth baffling. The silence of the abyss was violently breached. The operators, relying on telemetry alone, registered the rapid deployment of autonomous drones from the unregistered craft. What followed was a precise, rapid-fire engagement conducted entirely in the pitch dark, using specialized, non-explosive kinetic rounds designed to disable propulsion and sensor arrays without leaving large, traceable wreckage fields. The recovered sonar logs are a cacophony of metallic groans, the high-frequency whine of closing distances, and the devastating impact reports that momentarily spiked the hydrophone sensitivity. The official history describes the sunken vessel as being damaged by geological shifting on the ocean floor. The truth is that the external pressure hull of the recovery platform sustained direct, controlled strikes, damage clearly inconsistent with passive geological forces. The crew experienced these moments as pure physical shock, transmitted through the dense water column and vibrating the titanium hull, accompanied by the agonizing sound of hull integrity momentarily compromised. They fought a ghost opponent miles below the world, an action that required instantaneous decision-making under literal crushing pressure. When the platform finally ascended, its exterior was scarred, not by corrosion, but by high-velocity impacts. The mission succeeded in its primary objective, but the cost was an unacknowledged battle fought in a realm traditionally considered impervious to immediate conflict. A battle now buried beneath the simple, sterile phrase, technical malfunction. The true casualty count, both human and material, was systematically folded into unrelated operational losses from prior scheduled exercises, ensuring that the ledger remained clean. And the strategic implications of the deep-sea engagement were never formally admitted. The cold, indifferent water holds the only honest witness. The second ghost action transpired in a landscape of unforgiving elevation and profound silence, designated in internal files simply as the Plateau.
This location was a desolate, elevated border region, marked by vast expanses of scree, jagged, slate-gray peaks, and an unrelenting regime of cutting, Arctic-grade wind.
The territory itself was geographically ambiguous, a stretch of land that neither nation actively claimed on official maps, yet both understood its strategic value as a high-ground observation point. The deployment involved a highly specialized light infantry detachment, tasked with establishing a temporary reconnaissance beacon and holding the position for a planned 48 hours until a rotating weather pattern allowed for extraction. The atmosphere of the plateau was defined by its hostility. The air was thin, painfully cold, and the visibility could transition in minutes from stark, high-altitude clarity to a choking whiteout. The primary challenge was survival. The specialized kit included insulated layers designed to handle temperatures dipping far below freezing. But the relentless, abrasive wind leached heat and endurance with cruel efficiency. Every breath was a rasping, freezing effort, and the ground was a treacherous mix of loose, frozen rock and treacherous patches of glazed ice. The skirmish commenced on the 27th hour, far ahead of any intelligence prediction. It began not with a formal declaration or even an identifiable border crossing, but with the sudden muffled reports of synchronized small arms fire carried erratically on the whipping gusts. The opponents were highly trained, expertly camouflaged against the gray-white terrain, moving with an unnerving proficiency across ground that crippled standard maneuvers. It was a close-quarters, localized battle fought over millimeters of frozen earth, focused entirely on the immediate tactical objective, the high prominence where the beacon sat. The sensory details of this engagement were defined by the environment's dampening effect. Gunfire sounded flat and distant. Screams were ripped instantly away by the gale. And the physical exertion, the sprint up icy slopes, the desperate scrambling for cover behind meager rock formations, was compounded by the acute effects of altitude sickness, turning every movement into a crushing physical burden. The engagement lasted less than an hour, a sharp, violent burst of focused attrition. The detachment held the beacon location, repelling the incursion, but at a severe, localized cost. The problem for the official report was the existence of the casualties. 5 highly specialized operators did not return. In the subsequent internal accounting, the official narrative provided 2 interlocking explanations. First, the weather anomaly cited in Hydrus was repurposed, now claiming that a sudden, localized blizzard of unprecedented ferocity had necessitated the abandonment of the temporary post, and resulted in the presumed loss of personnel to the elements, a standard risk in high-altitude operations. Second, the personnel were quietly listed as missing, status undetermined, and their payroll records were systematically merged with those of larger, conventional military exercises running concurrently hundreds of miles away. The death certificates were never issued. The bodies, recovered weeks later beneath a protective layer of heavy snow by a separate deep cover retrieval team, were cremated and their ashes processed without public notification or funerary rites. The bureaucratic silence surrounding this incident was as cold and pervasive as the wind on the plateau itself. The official manifest ledgers show only 5 entries of equipment written off due to catastrophic environmental damage, implying the personnel were simply caught out by nature. The reality, the brutal, visceral evidence of defense wounds, kinetic trauma, and the spray pattern of high-caliber rounds found embedded in the frozen rock remains sealed in the forgotten operational file. The mission was a success in denying the enemy the high ground, but the defense was a costly, unacknowledged sacrifice, swallowed whole by the political necessity of maintaining the illusion of an inactive neutral border. The third dossier details a catastrophic systems failure involving an experimental high-altitude drone platform. An incident that occurred thousands of feet above a dense, ostensibly neutral jungle canopy in a remote equatorial zone. This was a reconnaissance platform of revolutionary design, utilizing unconventional propulsion and sensor technology. Operating in a sensitive corridor where advanced surveillance capabilities were paramount. The official report, immediately drafted and disseminated to quell any external inquiry, cited a clear, irrefutable reason for the loss: an extreme, unprecedented weather anomaly, specifically a powerful, localized convective storm cell that generated wind shear beyond the vehicle's design tolerances. The narrative was simple, clean, and attributable to the uncontrollable forces of nature. The operational reality contained in the suppressed logs paints a picture far more complex and terrifying. The drone, codenamed Icarus, did not succumb to weather. Its telemetry shows a rapid, catastrophic degradation of system control, consistent with sophisticated electronic countermeasures, ECM, employed by a rival actor operating within the flight envelope. The failure was not a gradual environmental stress, but an immediate, violent wresting of control, leading to the platform's uncontrolled descent into the jumbo below. The subsequent rapid retrieval operation was launched under intense pressure, operating under the cloak of night and suffocating tropical humidity. The jungle floor was a sensory nightmare. The air was thick, heavy, smelling intensely of wet earth, fermenting foliage, and the acrid scent of ozone left by the drone's failure. Movement was agonizingly slow, hindered by dense, knotted vegetation, treacherous mud that swallowed boots whole, and the constant, high-pitched chorus of insects and unseen fauna. The retrieval team consisted of specialized technical personnel escorted by a small security element, their primary mission being absolute hardware denial. They had to find the wreckage, secure the classified components, and eliminate the rest before dawn. The site itself was a zone of chaotic destruction. The impact had pulverized the surrounding canopy, leaving a scar of broken branches and shredded leaves. The atmosphere at the crash site was charged with tension and urgency. The only illumination came from hooded tactical lamps, casting stark, shallow shadows across the mud and the debris field. The recovery process was hampered by the sheer weight and awkwardness of the equipment. Retrieving sensitive sensor packages required precision work, performed while simultaneously battling the pervasive heat and the gnawing anxiety of potential interception. The sensory details of the retrieval were visceral. The technical specialists worked with hands slick with sweat and mud, trying to carefully pry complex components from twisted, superheated metal structure. The sound of the jungle at night, the incessant buzzing, chirping, and the occasional snap of a distant branch created an oppressive, paranoid background. They could feel the wet, humid air sticking to their clothing, making the heavy packs feel heavier, the mission duration feel eternal. They worked against the clock, knowing that daylight would expose their position to overhead surveillance. The official report mentioned only the loss of the platform and the successful recovery of non-critical flight data recorders, FDRs, days later. It made no mention of the immediate, frantic night retrieval. The specialized denial charges used to obliterate the frame and non-essential components. Or the brief, tense confrontation with two unmarked ground reconnaissance teams encountered during the extraction phase, a conflict solved not through firepower, but through swift, silent maneuver and psychological deterrence. The catastrophic loss of classified hardware due to enemy action, the evidence of technological compromise, and the subsequent high-risk infiltration operation were all obscured by the narrative of the weather anomaly. The jungle swallowed the truth of the failure, leaving only the damp, metallic smell of wreckage. And the sealed records detailing the true technological vulnerability exposed by the rivals' effective counterstrike. The fourth incident shifts the focus from hostile environments to the chaotic complexity of human displacement and civil volatility. It revolves around a seemingly benevolent humanitarian aid deployment that rapidly and disastrously spiraled into a tactical security incident in a densely populated urban sector. The mission was initially presented as a standard logistical effort, the distribution of essential supplies, medical assistance, and structural support, in a city ravaged by localized internal conflict. The official reports emphasized the neutrality of the deployment, focusing heavily on the successful delivery metrics and the positive engagement with the local populace. However, the reality of urban environments dictates a different operational profile. The city was a maze of tight, shadowed alleyways, echoing concrete corridors, and hastily constructed barricades. The atmosphere was thick with the smells of dust, exhaust, burning refuse, and underlying tension. The air was heavy, dry, and resonated constantly with the distant sounds of urban life, superimposed over the occasional sharp crack of residual small arms fire. The mission parameters eroded rapidly upon entry into the designated distribution zone. This area was not simply populated, it was controlled by deeply entrenched non-state armed elements, who viewed the humanitarian presence as a strategic threat, a potential vector for intelligence gathering, or a soft target for resource acquisition. The aid convoy, designed primarily for logistical efficiency, lacked the necessary layered defense to operate effectively once the perimeter was breached. The spiral began with targeted sniper fire aimed at the convoy's protective security detail, quickly escalating into a sustained ambush utilizing the dense urban clutter as cover. The security element was forced into an immediate reactive tactical engagement, transforming a mission of mercy into a violent defense maneuver within seconds. The immediate goal shifted from supply distribution to exfiltration and personnel survival. The intensity of the urban fight was characterized by echoing gunfire that bounced off the concrete walls. The pervasive visual distortion caused by smoke grenades and the fine pulverized dust rising from impact sites, and the absolute lack of clear lines of sight. Sensory overload was immediate. The relentless noise, the flashes of muzzle fire in shadowed windows, the proximity of non-combatants caught in the crossfire. The security teams had to navigate this chaos, distinguishing threats from civilians, a burden that amplified the difficulty exponentially. The critical phase involved a rapid mechanized breach to clear a path for the disabled aid trucks. This necessary tactical maneuver, involving suppressive fire and the calculated use of localized explosive charges to clear structural obstacles, inevitably resulted in significant collateral impact. The official report minimized this entirely, claiming the only structural damage occurred due to pre-existing instability in the conflict zone, and attributing civilian injuries to unrelated, ongoing regional violence. The operational files, however, document the agonizing process of assessing unintended consequences in the direct aftermath. The use of kinetic force in such a dense environment is inherently imprecise. The files record the specific addresses, the material density of the structures impacted, and the number of individuals treated for immediate collateral trauma by the very medical personnel they were ostensibly deployed to protect. This data, demonstrating the tactical necessity of actions that nevertheless resulted in non-combatant casualties, was systematically stripped from the public mission assessment. The casualty figures, both the number of security personnel wounded and the precise extent of the collateral impact, were buried beneath euphemistic classifications like environmental disturbance and non-mission-related incidents. The narrative was preserved. The humanitarian mission was a success, at the cost of omitting the brutal, unavoidable truth of the urban engagement and the tragic side effects of forced escalation. The official history speaks of aid delivered. The suppressed history details the sharp, desperate fighting required simply to survive the attempt. Finally, the fifth action details the deliberate, calculated destruction of a long-deactivated forward listening post. This facility, codenamed Aegis, was nestled precariously on a sheer cliff face overlooking the turbulent expanse of the Northern Sea. For decades, Aegis had served as a critical node for intelligence gathering. Its array of specialized antennae and sensors focused on monitoring distant maritime and aerial traffic. Its location was chosen for its strategic isolation and height, making it visually striking, a brutalist concrete fixture clinging to the raw, salt-laced rock. The decision to demolish Aegis was based on a comprehensive security assessment that concluded the facility's deep-seated data archives and residual sensor technology represented an intolerable risk of compromise. The facility was slated for a final, controlled detonation designed to render the location inert, collapsing the structure and sealing the underground archives beneath thousands of tons of rock and debris. The official record of this event is brief and simple: a scheduled, controlled demolition executed by an engineering corps detachment to decommission an outdated site, resulting in, quote, minimal environmental impact. The reality of the operation involved a chilling level of precision and absolute compartmentalization. The site, despite being officially deactivated, still contained sensitive, non-removable hardware, and, crucially, residual operational teams specializing in final data integrity checks and the installation of complex demolition charges. The sensory environment of Aegis was defined by the relentless presence of the sea. The air was perpetually raw, damp, and smelled strongly of salt and ozone. The soundscape was dominated by the deep, rhythmic crash of waves against the base of the cliff far below, an incessant, indifferent thunder that vibrated through the facility's concrete shell. Inside, the spaces were cold, metallic, and echoing, filled with the faint hum of emergency power packs and the dry rustle of specialized protective suits. The unacknowledged cost centered on a specialized detachment of 5 security personnel assigned to the terminal hold phase. Their mission was to secure the perimeter and maintain active electronic denial systems right up until the point of detonation, ensuring that no unauthorized transmission or penetration attempt succeeded during the final critical hours of preparation. The plan called for the detachment to be extracted by fast rope helicopter 15 minutes before the countdown reached 0. The suppressed operational logs, however, detail a communications breakdown and a sudden, localized, severe weather front, unrelated to the official weather anomaly narrative, that closed the extraction window entirely. The wind speeds reaching the cliff face climbed far above safe operational limits for the rotary wing extraction platform. The commanding officer on the ground faced a brutal dilemma: abort the detonation, risking massive data compromise and potentially hours of exposed vulnerability, or adhere to the timing of the scheduled blast, ensuring total denial. The detachment was ordered to hold their position and secure the final detonation sequence manually. Their presence was deemed essential to prevent last-minute sabotage attempts by suspected monitoring vessels known to patrol the outer perimeter. The detonation charge was armed, the countdown initiated, and the specialized team was left standing in the cold, echoing chambers of the facility. Their last confirmed transmission, a single terse report confirming final armed status. The official records omit the specialized detachment entirely.
Their names vanished from the manifest days prior, quietly retired and classified as permanent attachment to deep cover assets, a bureaucratic non-existence that allowed for the official narrative of a seamless, unmanned, controlled detonation. The records contain the timestamp of the successful blast, the sudden, overwhelming kinetic shock that momentarily silenced the ocean, followed by the sight of the cliff face dissolving in a plume of dust and pulverized concrete settling over the silent, indifferent waves.
The demolition was a technical success, achieving absolute data denial.
But the mission required 5 men to willingly transition from necessary assets to unavoidable collateral, their existence erased in the single, deliberate thunderclap.
The official history only records the engineering feat. The sealed history preserves the memory of the final, echoing silence after the explosion, a silence that covered not just the destruction of a building, but the calculated eradication of highly specialized human assets.
These 5 incidents,
Hydrus, the Plateau, Icarus, the Urban Spiral, and Aegis, do not merely represent footnotes to official histories. They are the ghost architecture, upon which global power dynamics truly rest. They are the undeniable evidence that the most critical operations often occur beyond the public gaze and outside the moral boundaries of public acknowledgement. The official reports serve as sophisticated denial mechanisms, using technical failures, weather anomalies, and bureaucratic sleight of hand to sanitize the ledger. The real history is found in the brittle textures of sealed documents, the sensory trauma embedded in the memories of the survivors, and the cold, unyielding data logs that refuse to lie, confirming the persistent, costly gap between operational necessity and transparent truth. The price of such deniability is the existence of men and women whose sacrifices are folded into the silence, their actions permanently lost to the recorded history of the world.